There is a secret sitting at the absolute center of your life, true, terrifying, and yet so blindingly beautiful that it remains hidden in plain sight. It is a paradox of such magnitude that the moment you truly grasp it, not intellectually, but viscerally, in the marrow of your bones, the heavy, suffocating armor you have worn for a lifetime does not just fall off, it evaporates. It dissolves into the architecture of light. Consider the energy you consume every single day. We spend our entire existence acting as the architect and the guardian of a fortress. We build high walls to protect something we believe is the most precious object in the universe. We call this object I. We defend it against the arrows of criticism. We adorn it with the gold of achievements. We soothe it with distractions when it is wounded by rejection. We treat this I as a solid, immutable diamond that must be preserved at all costs. But have you ever dared to stop, in the deepest, most geometric silence of the night, to ask the most dangerous question a human consciousness can formulate? If you were to walk through the gates of that fortress, past the defenses, past the noise of your history, and look for the master of the house, the one you are protecting, would you actually find anyone home? Nothing feels more solid than the sensation of I exist. It is the undeniable gravity of your world. It is the anchor point for every regret of the past and every anxiety of the future. It feels like a dense, heavy stone in the center of your chest. Yet, when the great sages, the mystics, and now the quantum physicists ask us to pinpoint exactly where and what this I is, the solidity begins to tremble. It shakes like a mirage rising from the asphalt in the desert heat. Let us conduct an autopsy of the self. Try to find you. Point to your body. Is that you? The science of biology whispers a haunting truth that contradicts your intuition. The body you possessed 7 years ago is completely dead. It has vanished from the face of the earth. Every cell, every molecule, every single atom has been replaced. You are not a static object, you are a metabolic storm. You are a river of matter, constantly flowing, never stagnant for even a microsecond. The carbon in your muscles, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen feeding your brain is all on loan from the earth, and it is all being returned to the earth in real time. The face you see in a childhood photograph is not you. It is a stranger, a biological ghost, a history of a flame that has long since burned through that specific wax. If you lose an arm, do you lose you? If you transplant your heart, is the you behind the eyes different? The body is a vessel, a guest house for chemistry, but it is not the owner. So you retreat. You say, I am not this dying meat. I am my mind. I am my memories. I am the story. But look closely at the texture of your mind. Look at it with the cold precision of a surgeon. Your memories are not video recordings. They are fading parchments, rewritten and re-encoded every single time you access them. You are editing the film of your life in real time, often creating fictions to support your current identity. The personality you had as a teenager, that specific alchemy of angst, desire, and ignorance has dissolved. It is gone. Your political views, your favorite colors, your deepest convictions shift like sand dunes under the wind of circumstance. We can define and label every object in the known universe, from the smallest vibrating quark to the largest supermassive black hole. Yet we cannot pin down the observer doing the defining. The Buddha, in his piercing diamond-like wisdom, did not play the game of hide and seek. He didn't ask, "Where is the self?" because that question presumes there is something to find. Instead, he asked a question that cuts through the illusion like a laser. What makes us believe there is a fixed, permanent entity here in the first place? This is not a philosophical riddle to discuss over coffee. This is the root cause of every tear you have ever shed. This is the source of every war, every heartbreak, and every moment of existential dread. The Buddha pointed to a subtle, almost invisible distinction that we miss in our daily trance. There is the experience of I, the feeling of presence, the sensation of aliveness, which is undeniable. But then there is the belief in an entity called I, a solid, unchanging soul, a pilot inside the machine, a homunculus steering the ship. When we look with the microscope of deep meditation, we find the experience, but we never, ever find the entity. It gets stranger. Consider the linguistic trance we live in. You say, "I have changed so much. I am a completely different person now." And in the very same breath, you say, "It was me who changed." Do you see the contradiction? It is a logical impossibility. If everything about you, your biology, your psychology, your neurology, has transformed, then who is the I that claims to have survived the change? If there is a permanent you, how could it change? And if everything has changed, what thread connects the infant to the elder? We live in a fundamental state of hallucination. We feel like a solid rock enduring through time, but we are actually a waterfall. You remember being 5 years old, running in the grass, the smell of summer rain. That child had a different brain structure, different beliefs, a different body. Yet you say, "That was me." You believe there is an unbroken, golden thread connecting that child to the adult you are today. But the Buddha revealed that we are mistaking a rapid continuity for a solid object. Imagine a single candle flame burning through the long, dark hours of the night. You look at it at dusk, and you look at it again at dawn, and you say, it is the same flame. But is it? The wax is different. The wick is different. The oxygen feeding the fire is new every millisecond. The flame at dawn shares no physical molecules with the flame at dusk. Yet, there is a pattern. The flame at dawn exists because of the flame at dusk. There is a causal connection, a continuity, but there is no sameness. You are like that flame. You are not a statue here, you are a burning process. You are a stream of consciousness, what the ancients called Siddha, Santana. You are a series of moments arising and passing away with breathtaking speed, governed by the cold and perfect laws of cause and effect. You are connection without sameness. You are continuation without permanence. But because we insist on seeing ourselves as solid statues rather than flowing fire, we suffer. We try to freeze the flame, and in doing so, we burn ourselves. Listen to the internal civil war we wage every day. I am disappointed in myself. I need to control myself. I hate myself. Who is talking to whom? Who is the controller and who is the controlled? If there is only one I, how does it split into a judge, a jury, and a defendant? We assume there is a real me deep inside, pulling the strings, and a surface me that acts in the world. We exhaust our life force trying to reconcile these two, never noticing that the split itself is the hallucination. There is no man behind the curtain. Modern neuroscience has finally caught up to this ancient insight 2,500 years later. When scientists scan the living brain, They find no seat of the soul. There is no command center. There is no CEO's office in the cortex. There are only distributed processes, flashing neural networks firing in synchronization like a murmuration of starlings. The brain constructs the sensation of a self as a user interface, a useful simplification, a map to help the organism navigate the territory of survival. But the map is not the territory. The Buddha's insight goes deeper than biology. He realized that there is no observer separate from the observation. There is seeing, but no seer standing apart from the light. There is thinking, but no thinker separate from the thought. When you look directly at raw experience, you do not find two things, an experiencer and an experience. You find only experiencing. It is a verb without a noun. It is pure action without an actor. So, if there is no fixed, solid I inside the castle, what is it that gets hurt when someone insults you? What feels threatened when you lose your job, your status, or your lover? To understand this, we must walk back to the dusty roads of ancient India. A wanderer named Vakagata approached the Buddha with a burning question, a trap laid with words: does the self exist? The Buddha sat in thunderous, geometric silence. Vakagata pressed him, then does the self not exist? Again, the Buddha remained silent, immovable as a mountain. Later, the Buddha explained this silence to his disciple Anatta. He said, "If I had said the self exists, he would have fallen into eternalism, the trap of believing in a permanent, unchangeable soul. If I had said the self does not exist, he would have fallen into nihilism, the dark abyss of believing nothing matters, that there is no responsibility for our actions." The Buddha's silence was not an evasion, it was a supreme act of surgical compassion. The question itself was broken. It assumes self is a thing that either is or is not. But what if self is not a thing at all? What if self is like the word yesterday? You cannot touch yesterday. You cannot put yesterday in a box. It is a useful concept for organizing time, but it has no tangible reality. You cannot live in yesterday. The Buddha was not a philosopher debating metaphysics. He was a spiritual doctor. His only concern was the diagnosis and cure of the human condition. In the Pali texts, the teaching is not there is no self. The teaching is anatta, not self. It is not a doctrine to be believed. It is a tool to be used. It is a scalpel. It is a lens through which to view reality. The formula is precise: Sabbi, Dhamma, and Anatta, all phenomena are not self. He gave us a practice, a contemplative solvent to dissolve the glue of the ego. He taught us to look at every thought, every emotion, every sensation, and apply the formula en ida mama en isoham asmi na mi soata. Each phrase undoes a knot in the heart. This is not mind cuts through possessiveness. We try to own moments, my success, my pain, my story. But how can you possess a cloud that is already drifting away? This I am not cuts through identification. When anger rises like a red tide, we say I am angry, fusing our identity with a temporary chemical reaction. The practice invites you to say, there is anger. You observe the storm without drowning in it. This is not myself cuts through reification, the habit of freezing the flow into a solid block of me. This teaching of Anatta applies to everything. Nothing in the universe, not your thoughts, not your political views, not your trauma, not your gender, not your profession, has an inherent, independent self-nature. Everything arises dependent on conditions. Everything is empty of a separate essence. Why is this important? Why does this matter when you have bills to pay? Because we build our eye out of things that are destined to break. You construct an identity out of your career. When you retire, you feel you have ceased to exist. You construct an identity out of a relationship. When it ends, you feel you have died. This is the mechanism of suffering. Take any object or idea, add an upadana, and it becomes I. Once it is I, it can be wounded. You do not need to understand this philosophically. You need to catch it in the act. Watch your mind. When you suffer, there is always a contraction, a tightening around a story of me. Why is this happening to me? They didn't respect me. You can learn to see this me being constructed in real time. It is not a fact, it is a habit. It is a thought pattern that repeats so quickly it looks solid, like a spinning propeller blade. When the propeller spins, it looks like a solid disc. But when you slow it down, you see it as mostly empty space. If the self is an illusion, why does the pain feel so incredibly real? Why does rejection feel like a physical blow to the stomach? Because we believe the illusion. We organize our entire reality around it. It is like a nightmare. The monster in the dream is not real, but the sweat on your brow, the racing heart, the terror, those are very real. The body does not know the difference between a real threat and a threat to the ego. The Buddha called this avidya, ignorance. It is not just a lack of knowledge, it is a mis-knowing. It is like seeing a coiled rope in the twilight and screaming because you think it is a cobra. Your fear is real, but the snake was never there. When you turn on the light of wisdom, you don't kill the snake. You simply realize there was only a rope. The suffering dissolves because its foundation has vanished. So, what actually gets hurt when you are criticized? Someone says you are worthless. Physically, these are just sound waves hitting an eardrum. Physics and biology. No suffering yet, but instantly the mind spins a story. It references a self-image you have built. I am a good person. I am competent. The words strike this image, and the image cracks. You feel pain not because of the words, but because your mental construction is under attack. We spend our lives curating a museum of the self. We polish the statues of our identity. We defend the gates. But this museum is made of glass, and the world is full of stones. When you identify with the construct, you are fragile. If you identify with being a great writer, then a bad review is a death sentence. If you identify with being young and beautiful, then a wrinkle is a tragedy. Clinging to sensual pleasure, clinging to views and opinions, clinging to rituals and routines, and clinging to the doctrine of the self. When you cling to a view, I am a liberal, I am a conservative, it is no longer just an idea. It is you. If someone attacks the idea, you feel they are physically attacking you. This is why political debates become so vicious. It is not about policy. It is about identity survival. But here is the liberation. Suffering arises from the collision between impermanence and clinging. It arises from the gap between reality and your demand for reality to be different, specifically to suit me. When you see this mechanism, the grip loosens. You catch the mind in the act of appropriation. You see the thought, this is mine, and you smile at it. This is the beginning of freedom. It is not freedom from pain. If you have a nerve system, you will feel pain. It is freedom from suffering the mental anguish we add to the pain. The Buddha distinguished between Vedana and dukkha. If you are shot with an arrow, you feel the physical pain. That is the first arrow. But then you worry, you blame it, you tell a story about how unfair it is, you visualize your own death. That is the second arrow. The first arrow is inevitable. The second arrow is optional. Most of our lives are spent bleeding from the second arrow. The awakened mind is described as a Kampada Siddha, the unshakable mind. It is like a massive mountain. The wind screams, the rain lashes, but the mountain does not move. It is not unfeeling, it is simply not disturbed. When there is no I demanding comfort, pain is just sensation. It is pure energy. It doesn't spiral into a narrative of victimhood. The Buddha himself, in his old age, experienced terrible back pain. But he dwelled in mindfulness. He did not say, "My body is betraying me." He simply noted, "There is pain in the back." There was no resistance, and therefore, no suffering. Real liberation is not becoming an emotionless robot. It is the opposite. When you are not terrified of what emotions say about you can feel them fully. You can let anger burn through like a wildfire and leave no ash. You can let grief wash through like a tidal wave and retreat, leaving the sand clean. You say, "There is anger," instead of "I am angry." You become the sky, allowing the weather to pass, knowing the sky is never damaged by the storm. When you stop defending the fortress of I, you become invincible. Not because you are hard, but because you are open. An arrow can only hit a target. If you remove the target, the arrow passes through empty space. You can listen to criticism with curiosity. You can love without the desperate grasping of "don't leave me." You can fail without becoming a failure. The sense of self will still arise. It is a biological function, a necessary interface. But you will see it for what it is, a thought, a cloud, a temporary arrangement of stardust. You will no longer believe the propaganda of the ego. The Buddha's final words were a reminder of this universal law: all conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence. Even at the moment of death, there was no fear, because the one who dies, the self, was already seen through. He knew that the wave was just returning to the ocean. So, the question shifts. It is no longer how can I protect myself? It becomes who is there to protect? When you really look into the center of your being, you find a vast, luminous emptiness. You find that the one you have been trying to save your whole life was never there. And in that realization, you do not lose yourself. You gain the universe. You are free to dance with life, unburdened, unscared, and utterly whole.